Temple Mount in Jerusalem has never been excavated, but an illegal construction project 20 years ago opened the door to some major discovery.
If tomorrow morning the world learned that the foundations of Jerusalem's Temple Mount, one of the most sacred and contested places on earth, were built not only as a sanctuary, but possibly as a prison.
There was a natural area on the earth that the Temple Mount was deliberately built around.
How would humanity react? Would it be dismissed as conspiracy, buried by politics? Or would it force us to rethink 3,000 years of faith, prophecy, and history? Because in 2024, something happened that no government, no religious authority, and no archaeological institution expected, and certainly none of them wanted. An illegal artificial intelligence scan, quietly conducted beneath the Temple Mount, captured data that should have been impossible. Perfect geometric rooms sealed since the Iron Age. Ancient altars preserved in stone, a towering standing stone coated in ritual metals, and finally, a lead capsule containing a scroll written in a language older than Hebrew. Not a scroll of worship, not a scroll of history, but a warning. The original researchers tried to keep calm when they first saw the radar results, but the truth is that several of them reportedly stepped back from the monitor, pale and speechless. They understood that they had seen something no human being was ever meant to see, not because it was forbidden by governments or religious law, but because someone, long ago, had sealed these chambers on purpose, and the inscriptions, once translated, only deepened the mystery. Why would an underground chamber beneath the holiest site in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam contain a message reading, "Here the Warden stands guard, do not open"? Who or what was the Warden? What exactly was being guarded? And why did the scroll inside the chamber contain symbols used in ancient rituals designed not to praise a deity, but to bind something? The deeper you follow the evidence, the more unsettling the story becomes. Because the technology used in the chamber's construction appears centuries ahead of its time. Because the rituals detected there match forgotten traditions involving containment, not worship. And because the vocabulary of the scroll intersects with some of the oldest and most terrifying myths ever recorded in the ancient Near East. Stories of the fallen ones, the Watchers, the giants imprisoned beneath the mountains, and the divine beings who were sealed away until judgment. For thousands of years, the Temple Mount has been understood as the meeting point of God and humanity. But this new discovery whispers an unthinkable possibility, a possibility that echoes across scripture, legend, and archaeology. What if the Temple Mount was chosen not only as the place where heaven touched earth, but also the place where something ancient, powerful, and dangerous was locked away? Today's video takes you step by step through this astonishing narrative. We examine the unauthorized scan, the hidden shrine, the impossible architecture, the standing stone coated with binding metals, the circular Warden's chamber, and the sealed scroll that terrified the scholars who read its first lines. And the final question we'll confront is the same one the researchers whispered to each other before their project was shut down. If the seal beneath the Temple Mount ever breaks, what exactly is supposed to wake up? For more than a century, archaeologists have dreamed of exploring the ground beneath the Temple Mount. Every stone on that platform holds thousands of years of history. Yet everyone, religious leaders, governments, even scientists themselves, knows why it can never happen. The moment someone suggests digging, the world reacts the same way, with panic. The Temple Mount is sacred to over half of humanity. A shovel in the wrong place could trigger conflict faster than any political decision. That's why the new generation of researchers believe non-invasive technology could be the safe solution. No digging, no disturbance, no violation of sacred law, just data, radio waves bouncing through soil, processed by advanced AI. At least, that was the idea. Between 2021 and 2024, a small team quietly compiled an enormous data set using ground-penetrating radar and newly trained machine learning models. Their goals were modest: map geological layers, compare them with 19th century British survey maps, and maybe learn more about the natural bedrock beneath Jerusalem. But every great discovery in history begins with someone asking a question that accidentally breaks the rules. At first, the scans looked normal: random shapes, uneven patterns, the typical chaotic signature of ancient rubble. But one night, as the AI refined its pattern recognition algorithm, the system produced an alert. A shape had appeared, then a second, Then an entire cluster of lines and angles, too precise, too perfect to be natural. Imagine staring at a monitor expecting static and suddenly seeing a blueprint appear. Straight walls, symmetrical corners, a layout so clean it looks like it was drawn with a ruler. That's exactly what the lead researcher saw. The room fell silent. These were chambers, rectangular rooms, aligned on a straight axis, buried 30 feet below the Temple Mount platform. And the most unsettling part? There were no entrances, no tunnels, no stairways, no carved corridors, just sealed, self-contained rooms, untouched for nearly 3,000 years. The team understood instantly what this meant. Someone in ancient Jerusalem built these chambers and then deliberately erased their access points, sealing them forever. But why? Before they could answer, the next layer of imaging revealed something that defied everything we know about the region's architecture.
That's like untouched 2,000-year-old stuff.
Exactly.
Do you see that spider?
The problems are the scorpion.
Most underground structures in Jerusalem can be dated to certain eras. Herod's expansions, the Second Temple, the Hasmonean fortifications, even Iron Age water tunnels. They each have recognizable construction styles, but these chambers were different. The layout aligned perfectly with the eastern wall of the platform, a precision that belonged to an era before Herod, before the Second Temple, perhaps even before Solomon's temple itself. If that timeline is true, then the rooms beneath the mount predate the very structure that made the site holy. This single idea already shakes archaeology, because if something older than the first temple lies beneath it, then the story of the Temple Mount is not what we think it is. After hours of reviewing scans, one of the researchers whispered what everyone else had been thinking, but was too afraid to say, "We shouldn't be seeing this." And he didn't mean politically, he meant morally, spiritually, historically. Because the radar images weren't just showing empty chambers, they were showing patterns. Patterns that suggested ritual use, patterns that hinted at altars, basins, stone installations, and objects arranged with intentional symmetry. This wasn't storage, it wasn't a cistern, it wasn't a forgotten construction project. This was a shrine, and it was untouched. No soot, no collapse damage, no signs of human disturbance. It had survived earthquakes, wars, conquests, renovations, and centuries of religious tension, perfectly preserved, as if time itself refused to enter. That is when the researchers realized they were dealing with something unprecedented, a hidden sanctuary, sealed beneath the holiest site in the Middle East, preserved for nearly 3 millennia, and now exposed by a forbidden scan. But as astonishing as this was, the next discovery would push the team from curiosity into genuine fear, because the deeper layers of the scan revealed an object that should not have survived. A single stone, 10 feet tall, standing upright, coated in what appeared to be ritual metals used in ancient binding ceremonies. And that stone was only the beginning. When the AI reconstructed the first chamber in full detail, the research team expected rubble, broken stones, collapsed ceilings, sediment, typical signs of 3,000 years of earthquakes and conflict. What they saw instead made the lead analyst step away from the screen in disbelief. The chamber was perfectly intact, not partially preserved, not ruined but recognizable, but frozen in time. The walls, floor, and ceiling aligned so precisely that you could almost imagine walking into it with a torch. It was as if the people who had used this place had simply walked out one evening and never returned. The digital imaging revealed 8 connected rooms, carved directly into limestone, following a symmetrical architectural logic not found in any known above-ground Jerusalem temples. The room layout didn't match Solomon's temple. It didn't match the Second Temple. It didn't match Herodian architecture, Hasmonean architecture, or the ritual complexes described in the Mishnah. It was something else. And yet, everything inside suggested worship. High-resolution scans revealed altars with hardened organic residue, stone basins bearing traces of olive oil and animal fat, water incense signatures, crushed olive pits used in ancient lamp, ritual tools neatly arranged, as if waiting for the next ceremony. The AI even detected microscopic residues consistent with Iron Age sacrificial practices, just like those uncovered at Tel Arad and Tel Motza. But here's the detail that shocked historians the most. These ritual items belong to a type of worship that the Hebrew Bible says should have been abolished. According to Scripture, King Hezekiah, one of Judah's most reform-driven kings, destroyed all competing shrines to centralize worship in Jerusalem. The Bible states he removed the high places, smashed sacred pillars, down Asherah poles, centralized all offerings to the temple. And yet, here, beneath the Temple Mount, sat a shrine that was not destroyed, but sealed. Why would a king determined to eliminate rival worship allow this sanctuary to survive? Why hide it instead of smashing it? Some archaeologists began drawing connections to parallel discoveries. In the Judean desert, the Tel Arad temple shocked scholars when twin altars representing two forms of worship were discovered. These altars had been buried with clean sand, not destroyed. A nearly identical situation to what the AI now revealed under the Temple Mount. This suggests that certain priests, rather than obey the king's reforms, secretly protected older traditions by concealing them instead of eliminating them. Other discoveries across ancient Judah provide context. Inscriptions from Kuntilat Adrud mention Yahweh and his Asherah, hinting at a divine pair. Ritual objects found across Iron Age. Judah shows syncretic worship, an official religion above ground, older traditions below. Suddenly, the shrine under the Temple Mount made sense. It was not an anomaly. It was the hidden survival of a religious system older than Hezekiah's reforms. This realization changed everything. It suggested that Jerusalem, far from being a unified spiritual center, was divided, layered, and ideologically complex. And while the official temple rose above, a parallel, more ancient faith continued beneath. But amid all the compelling artifacts, one object dominated the chamber, towering, immovable, and eerily well-preserved: the standing stone. In the center of the primary chamber stood a 10-foot-tall masaba, a standing stone used in some of the earliest Israelite rituals to represent the presence of a deity. But this wasn't just any masaba. Spectral analysis revealed that its surface carried traces of mercury. Ancient cultures used mercury not as decoration, but as a binding metal, a substance believed to trap spirits, contain divine essence, seal supernatural forces. The moment this detail appeared in the data logs, the room full of scholars suddenly went quiet, because this meant the stone wasn't simply a symbol. It was functional. It was meant to do something. In Canaanite and Mesopotamian rituals, mercury-coated stones were used in ceremonies that dealt not with worship, but with containment. Priests in Byblos, Sidon, and Carthage left written accounts of living stones believed to house divine or dangerous beings, rituals to silence or bind unseen forces, shrines built not to honor gods, but to imprison them. Now picture that scenario. Beneath the holiest site in Judaism, beneath the dome of the rock, beneath the very ground where the temple once stood, a stone that wasn't an altar and wasn't simply a relic, but a seal. If the masaba served the same purpose here, then the underground shrine was not a sanctuary. It was a containment facility. And suddenly, biblical stories long interpreted as metaphor began looking eerily literal. Isaiah speaks of fallen beings shut up in prison. Genesis describes the mighty ones of old, punished by God. The Book of Enoch details the watchers who were bound under the mountains. Were these poetic, symbolic, mythological, or were ancient priests describing something they believed was real? By early 2024, the research team had already pushed far beyond what they intended. The hidden shrine alone was enough to challenge history and threaten international stability if revealed. But the AI system wasn't done. When the technicians activated the deeper scans, the monitors filled with heavy static, thick waves of interference normally caused by dense minerals or extremely smooth surfaces. At first, they assumed it was an error. Then the noise sharpened into shape. What appeared on the screen next made several researchers stand up from their seats. A circular chamber, perfectly carved, 10 feet across, and its walls polished so smoothly that the radar waves had bounced off like light hitting glass. Nothing in ancient Jerusalem looked like this. Nothing in the entire region. In fact, archaeologists expect ancient structures to show chisel marks, uneven cuts, stone blocks fitted together, imperfections of Bronze and Iron Age tools. But this chamber showed none of those. It was carved from solid bedrock in a perfect circle, a design that would require advanced cutting tools, precision measurement instruments, and a level of engineering unknown in the 8th century BCE. Even today, Carving a perfect subterranean sphere with no access tunnels would be a major challenge. For ancient builders, it should have been impossible. Yet there it was. And even more disturbing, there were no entrances, no shafts, no corridors, no signs of human access at all. The chamber was engineered to be sealed forever, created around something, not built to be entered, as the AI enhanced the outer wall. Faint markings appeared, curved symbols etched directly into the smooth stone. The linguists didn't need hours to identify them. They recognized the script almost immediately, Paleo-Hebrew, an early form of writing from the earliest centuries of the First Temple period. The inscription read, "Here the Warden stands guard, do not open." A hush fell over the entire room. This wasn't a temple dedication. It wasn't a prayer. It wasn't a royal inscription. It was a warning, and not the metaphorical kind. Ancient inscriptions rarely used imperative commands unless the subject was hazardous, forbidden, or sacred. This one used all three, using acoustic modeling and radiographic layering. The AI reconstructed the chamber's interior. At the center, a large stone basin, carved from a single block. Surrounding it, several oil lamp-shaped objects, simpler than any known ritual lamps from the First or Second Temple period. Only in the basin, traces of lead and mercury. Around the basin, incense compounds made from mandrake and henbane, plants associated with trance states, purification rituals, and binding ceremonies. None of these materials fit typical worship practices. They matched something else entirely: protective rites, containment rituals, spiritual quarantine. Historians reviewing the data began drawing frightening parallels. The Book of Enoch describes watchers imprisoned beneath mountains. The Dead Sea Scrolls mention a warden of the pit, guarding the fallen. Mesopotamian texts speak of the Anunnaki sealed underground by priests using metal-infused rituals. Ugaritic tablets describe divine beings trapped in circles of stone. The similarities were devastatingly clear. This chamber was not built to honor something. It was built to hold something back. The inscription wasn't poetry. It was literal. To answer this, scholars revisited a historical event often overlooked in biblical study: the Siege of Jerusalem in 701 BCE. During that crisis, Hezekiah's priests reportedly performed secret rituals in the temple courts. No text describes what those rituals were, only that they were desperate, urgent, and not part of normal worship. But the new evidence suggested a terrifying possibility. The priests weren't praying for victory. They were strengthening a seal, a barrier, a lock, a boundary meant to contain something believed to dwell beneath the mount. And they may have feared that the violence of the siege, the tremors, the tunneling, the explosions would weaken the ancient chamber's integrity. Another detail deepened the mystery. The chamber was engineered to trap and absorb sound. Acoustic modeling revealed every vibration bounced inward. I'll say the energy was trapped within the structure. No resonance escaped outward into surrounding rock. This was not superstition. This was sophisticated engineering. It meant the chamber's purpose involved containing spiritual or energetic disturbance, as described in some of the oldest ritual texts in the ancient Near East. You don't build a soundproof circular vault for offerings. You build one to isolate something. Beneath the central basin of the Warden's chamber, buried under layers of limestone, resin, and millennia of untouched darkness, lay a small metallic object. At first, the AI flagged it as a natural anomaly, a metallic pocket, perhaps an ore deposit or a geological oddity. But as the imaging sharpened, the object took on a clear cylindrical shape, far too symmetrical to be natural. The researchers froze. A capsule, carved stone on the outside, lead on the inside, sealed not just to protect the object within, but to keep it imprisoned. Lead was the key. In the ancient world, lead was not a decorative metal. It was the metal of containment. Romans used it to bury curses. Mesopotamian priests used it to trap invoked spirits. Judean priests used it to seal away ritual texts not meant for everyday eyes. So when the AI reconstruction revealed what looked unmistakably like a rolled scroll inside the capsule, the entire team understood how serious this was. This wasn't a message meant for the future. It was a text meant never to be opened again. The first high-resolution model revealed faint lines on the scroll's outer layer, inscriptions. But they weren't Hebrew. They weren't Aramaic. They weren't any West Semitic language typically found in Iron Age Jerusalem. The symbols belonged to a system that predated both. Their looping geometry and repeating sigils matched. Akkadian binding texts, Sumerian apotropaic tablets, and Mesopotamian curse seal scripts used to trap supernatural entities. These weren't decorative markings, they were functional, designed to reinforce spiritual containment. The scroll was not a record, it was a seal. And when scholars rotated the digital imaging to read the outermost line, they saw 3 words that chilled them: Seal of the Deep Ones. No one knew how to interpret the phrase, but similar language appears in Babylonian texts describing primordial beings confined to the underworld, Ugaritic tablets referencing ancient entities buried in the depths, Jewish mystical writings about the Deep Watchers, and fragments of the Book of Giants, one of the Dead Sea Scrolls. The phrase was ancient, but consistent. It always referred to beings that were bound. Only a small portion of the scroll's outer layer was visible through the lead casing. Using multi-angle density sampling, AI-enhanced tomography extracted a few lines. They were short, but devastating. One read, "When the light breaks the seal, the Warden's hand shall fall." Another fragment read, "The fallen who sleep beneath Zion." And then the imaging reached its limit. The lead was too dense. Any stronger radiation risked damaging the scroll. This was as far as technology could safely go, but it was enough to terrify the scholars, enough to terrify religious authorities, enough to terrify the governments involved, because the fallen has a precise meaning in ancient Judeo-Christian tradition. The Nephilim. Genesis 6 describes them briefly, the mighty ones of old, the men of renown. The Book of Enoch goes further, fallen angels who descended, defied heaven, and were punished by being bound beneath the earth. And in every version of the story, someone stands guard, a warden, a watcher, a guardian appointed not to protect humanity, but to protect the world from what lies below. Within days of this translation, the research project changed, not publicly, not with announcements, but internally. Suddenly, access was restricted. Data servers were wiped and reclassified. Every team member was required to sign new confidentiality agreements. Religious councils were alerted, and governmental agencies took over the site's jurisdiction. Officially, the reason given to the researchers was risk of political instability. Unofficially, several scholars later admitted something else. Religious authorities had warned that opening the scroll, or even digitally modeling more of it, could undo the covenant of containment. The phrase stuck with every researcher who heard it. What covenant? What containment? Who made it? And what exactly was being contained? According to multiple leaks, one additional phrase from the scroll's damaged edge was deciphered before the project was shut down. It read, "Bind them until the end of days." That line appears in several ancient traditions. The Book of Enoch, describing the punishment of the Watchers. Babylonian underworld texts. Early Christian apocalyptic writings. Jewish mysticism about the sleepers beneath the mountain. Every version describes the same event. A group of beings locked under sacred ground, guarded by spiritual forces, sealed until a prophesied time of release. Now imagine the implications. What if thousands of years ago, priests believed the Temple Mount was not only a holy place, but also the lid on a cosmic prison? What if its sanctity wasn't only symbolic? What if it was strategic? Lead, resin, stone, and ritual symbols all point to the same conclusion. The scroll is a binding mechanism, not a message, not scripture, not literature, a spiritual lock. If that is true, breaking it, or even inadvertently modeling too much of it, might symbolically break the seal. Scholars don't literally believe creatures would burst out of the earth, but they do believe that the ancient priests who created this seal believed exactly that. And belief, sacred, ancient, and deeply rooted, has always shaped the most powerful rituals in human history. It's enough to make any archaeologist hesitate, enough to make any priest tremble, enough to make any government shut the entire project down instantly. For centuries, the Temple Mount has stood as one of humanity's greatest symbols of devotion, a place where heaven and earth meet, where prophets walked, where prayers rise from millions of souls across generations. But the discovery hidden beneath its foundations forces us to confront a truth far older, far stranger, and far more unsettling than any of us imagined. What the AI scan uncovered was not just another archaeological layer. It was a warning embedded in stone, a message from an ancient world where spiritual conflict felt real, immediate, and terrifying. A shrine that history tried to erase. A standing stone coated in the metals of binding. A chamber carved with impossible precision. An inscription that reads like a last defense against catastrophe. And a scroll whose first translated lines speak of the fallen who sleep beneath Zion. And a warden who must not be disturbed. Whether these things were understood literally or symbolically in their own time no longer matters. What matters is the legacy they left behind. A legacy strong enough to inspire priests, prophets, kings, and entire civilizations to guard one hill for more than 3,000 years. Maybe the ancients weren't primitive. Maybe they weren't superstitious. Maybe they were trying to protect the future, trying to protect us. Because if even a fraction of their beliefs about the sealed chambers are true, then the Temple Mount is not simply holy ground. It is a boundary, a lid on something the ancient world feared so deeply that they buried it beneath their most sacred site. And now that modern technology has finally peeked beneath that lid, we're left with a question no archaeologist, priest, or scholar can answer. What happens if the seal ever breaks? Does it release metaphors, old stories long forgotten? Does it unleash truths about our past that religion and history never recorded? Or does it open something far more literal, something the ancients spent their lives trying to contain? The project is shut down, the data is classified, the scroll remains sealed, and the world moves on, unaware that a discovery capable of shaking global faith was hidden and buried again. But you know the story now. You've seen the evidence, the warnings, the patterns, and the implications that echo across thousands of years of human history. So now it's your turn. What do you think lies beneath the Temple Mount? A forgotten chapter of human religion? A myth made physical? Or something the ancient world was terrified to face again? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. I'll be reading everyone.